Thank you. Thank you, Traman. Good afternoon, guys. So I'll ask my fellow panelists to help all the fellow European speakers like me who are fighting jet lag by having a super entertaining conversation, okay? And I will usually start by giving a minute each, okay? Discipline, one after the other, 1 minute to tell who you are and what you do. I'll start with Patrick.
Hi, a very good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for being here. My name is Patrick Teck. Only in Singapore you get this, where a trade unionist sits on a panel at a Singapore FinTech Festival. Yeah, you don't get it anywhere else in the world. Yes, I'm with the trade unions in Singapore. We call it the National Trades Union Congress. Why we are here and why I am here too is because we are part of this coalition or this corporation to drive training, skills upgrading, and looking after workers to ensure they are employed and employable, particularly in the fintech space, in the financial and professional services space. So I co-chair a financial sector tripartite committee together with the Monetary Authority of Singapore, and we have been in this for the past 6-7 years, including some of the developments that you see, and well, happy to be here, and we'll chat more.
Richard.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. My name is Richard Sikang Bian. I work for Ant Group as a head of open source program office. So I cover the open source strategy and operations. So in terms of like why we're here, right? Because open source is naturally borderless and it's naturally global. So Ant Group has been doing open source for 10 plus years, but we only began having this kind of very formal kind of quote-unquote agencies of doing open source as a program office, and I built that from ground up since 2021. People might really know about Ant Group as a fintech company, but I really want to draw your attention to we're a big company, but we're also very small, just kind of borderline from Eric in the morning, because we're Ant. We do a lot of work for SMEs, and we do a lot of work for Tech for Inclusion. And for myself, before I joined Ant, I work at Square, which is another fintech company on the west, on the west hemisphere. So I'm having a pretty complete stories on the west and east, and just kind of like make things a little bit more fun. Another thing which I think I work for fintech for is I'm rich by name. Not really because I'm rich, but okay, anyway.
And you pass your minute by far. Raghwa, go ahead.
All right, good afternoon. My name is Rajagopalan. I'm the CEO of M Square Media, MSM for short. We provide training and skilling in IT, business, and hospitality via our 7 private colleges in Canada, trading under the name of Eton College, Multi-Hexa College, and Taylor Pro Colleges. We also provide online training with our online portal called Q Academy. Prior to joining M Square Media, I was leading or head of a agency for the government of British Columbia, where one of the focus was skilling of new workers and upskilling and reskilling of workers that were displaced through some other means. So that's what I do, and my big goal is to make sure that education is accessible to students everywhere, all around the world.
Thank you, Nicole.
Good afternoon, my name's Nicole Sandler. I head up digital policy at Barclays. I would not be shocked if nobody knows what digital policy is and what my role would be. And the reason I say that is because I've been doing this role for about 8 or 9 years, and my mum constantly asks me what it is I do, and my role has not changed. But a large part of my role is to work with stakeholders and try to amend the regulatory landscape to fit the products that we're going to be working on. And one of the really important parts of my role is to do upskilling, whether that's with stakeholders internally or externally, but also with consumers and investors. So I really welcome today's discussion. So thank you for having me here today.
Thank you, Nicole. Mukund.
Hi, my name is Mukund. I'm with the Boston Consulting Group for the last decade and a half. I've done various different things, mostly in the people leadership space. And most relevantly, in the last few years, I've been focusing on skilling at scale for governments, for corporates as well, both in the context of digital skilling and beyond. So actually, I find what you say, Nicole, very fascinating and very interesting.
So guys, I don't know if you've noticed it, but in the panel that they sold us before, there was the AI word that now has disappeared. Now the title is only about upskilling and reskilling. And I'm kind of happy about it because one of the things I wanted to talk about is that in history, recursively, there is always a technology that they sell us as displacing millions of jobs, right? And the last one was probably the the PC, the computer. They say, oh, the computer will displace millions of jobs because they will automatize stuff that today is done manually. And the latest trend is that AI will do the same. So my question to all of you, and be quick, and you are allowed to actually talk over each other, so let's make a conversation, okay? Is this time different? Who wants to give it a shot? Go.
I don't think it's different. I think it's the same as last time. Everybody was worried hundreds of millions of jobs will disappear. It never happened. I mean, we became more effective, we became more efficient by use of technology or use of computers. I think we're in the same era right now. AI will take away a lot of these mundane tasks, but there will be new jobs created that will basically fill or actually create jobs. So I don't think it's any different than last time.
So I think it could be different, although it might be the same, but we have a slightly different take on this. So I think it depends on what your job is. So I was a lawyer before I did policy, and I can tell you at 2 a.m. when I was doing due diligence, if there was some AI to help me, I would have been absolutely delighted. But if you're someone, for instance, who might work in a call center, your job is likely going to be lost, and you will have to find a new job. So I look at it two ways. One, it's a co-pilot, and it's helping you with your job, and that's great, and that there could be new roles that are created. But there will be a segment where jobs are lost, and that's happened in any technological revolution.
Yeah, if I may add, earlier this year when the report came out from the World Economic Forum about how generative AI may affect jobs, in the labor movement, I mean, being a union movement, we were particularly concerned and alarmed at the numbers, at the sheer numbers, at the millions of jobs lost. So we took a journey, we took a deep dive, because I head up strategy as well. So we worked very closely with the relevant government agencies, departments, and got quite a good ground sensing. We spent 6 months. The report is not publicly available, but I would just like to summarize what's the key takeaway from the report. After looking at it for the last 6 months, just recently, we came to the conclusion that there will be jobs lost. Obviously, because the more rudimentary, more mundane stuff will be powered by generative AI, but depends on, firstly, the different kind of industry sectors. Some may be a bit faster, some may be a bit slower. Secondly, also depends on the company, whether it's a big organization or a small one. And again, different sectors, depending on the sector. But finally, the most important thing is that there's no total net jobs, there's no total net job loss, but there's job losses, but net jobs do not go into a decline, does not go into a negative. Simply because, as what shared earlier, there's a lot of transformation, redesigning, new knowledge, new skills required, and basically a shift in the kind of jobs and the kind of skills that they are required. But otherwise, net jobs, well, at least I can comment for Singapore, we are not going to the negative.
I think the interesting thing is we tend to look at something which is very different, in its ability for what this tool can do from the past. But we often look at it from our perspectives of the past, right? So we are saying, look, in the past, new technologies cause disruption, but net positive. I do agree, by the way. I do think that's what's going to happen. But I think what's changed is history is less relevant, because we are entering into an era which is very, very different. We need to do things which are very, very different. Our need to be able to sense what is happening today and respond in the moment, respond fast, is very different from what it has been in the past. So I think it's going to create a whole new set of opportunities and challenges.
But also, what I find really interesting is we talk about AI as if it's a new technology. And my mum very clearly said to me that she had watched The Terminator and it was not new. And I absolutely agree with her. AI has existed since the 1950s. And yes, Gen AI is a new concept and a new tool on AI, but AI in itself isn't new. So you can see how the path will go partly with jobs, because we've been living with this for 70 years. So I view it ever so slightly differently.
Right, yeah. So I guess, as what we learn in business school, right? The short answer is it really depends. But then the quick answer is I do agree that, jobs will be lost, but there will be new jobs to be created. Just like what happened in the past, it's like because our population has been growing, and if you look at the numbers, right? The overall unemployment rate has been stay relatively stable, which means the net job gain is really there. So theoretically speaking, some of the jobs will be replaced by newer type of jobs. And kind of related to myself, I began my job I got trained as an electrical engineer, but then I began doing software and begins working as a test engineer. And then, there has been decline of the whole test industry. And then I trained myself as a developer. And then, after a couple of years, I pretty much took a part-time MBA. And now I'm doing tech strategy. So what I'm looking at is there will definitely be job loss, and it's going to be replaced by, just to echo what Nico mentioned, how this time is different, right? It has something to do with AIGC's G part. It's generative. So when we talk about generative, it's no longer like the past AIs, right? So we have multiple dimensions which got reduced into a smaller dimension. But this time, you have this amount of dimensions, or tensors, and it's going to be generate as many additional information as you might actually have. And this is a scary part. So how I look at it is I'm definitely seeing some of the jobs will be quote unquote upgraded. Yeah.
So upskilling is not a one-size-fits-all topic, right? And the example I always give is that we built a platform called timepledge.org to coach African entrepreneurs for free on soft skills. And then we slowly went into the hard skills, the coding skills. So talking with universities, we realized that the average AI course in Africa is 30 hours by semester. So 3 times less the average of universities in Europe. So my question is, how geographically agnostic this upskilling effort can be? Because I think that, as you would say, Richard, it really depends. And by the way, I challenge Nicole to give a quote from your mom in every single answer, because it's been twice so far. Now you have a very personal challenge. I kind of love your mom already. You want to give it a shot?
I mean, my mum loves that I quote her in these panels, so you'd think she'd then know what my job was, having heard me say so many things about it, but we're still at a no. Do I think it can be agnostic? So I'm going to not quote my mum, but put her into the example. My parents are South African, actually, from Cape Town and Johannesburg. And if I think about the different use cases that exist of some of these technologies, not just in financial services, but in other sectors, it's not going to be the same in the UK as it will be in other jurisdictions. And on that basis, I don't think it can necessarily be agnostic. You need to be teaching people skills that, yes, there'll be some which are relevant across the board, but there'll be others that are more specific to certain roles. And therefore, I don't think it's agnostic. And I did manage to get my mum and my dad into that.
Yeah, I agree with Nicole. I don't think it'd be geographically agnostic. I think there will be disparity. There has been a disparity, but the gap is actually closing. The gap is closing. So I think it's getting better with technology, use of technology. And now, people working remotely and a lot of virtual, I think a lot of those opportunities that may not have been in some of those areas will start to come to fruition. Hence, there will be a upskilling and more opportunities there for sure.
Yeah, I think in my experience, what I find is there are similarities of approach which can be taken. One of the things that came up in the last panel as well, the need to think big, think collaborations with government, corporations, policy measures, etc. I think that is a universally required thing, right? Skilling and upskilling cannot be addressed through small efforts here and there, right? Not individual organizations, individual companies. But the need to contextualize is very, very high, right? So we are doing some, for example, in the Middle East, the challenges of upskilling is different, both in terms of skill gaps, what the market needs, what kind of solutions will work. It's very different from what might be the case in Singapore or the rest of the region out here, and the same for the rest of the world. So I think we have to contextualize, but there's a lot to learn from common approaches. Some of the things that the Singapore government is doing, for instance, is very, very interesting and valuable when you think about upskilling systemically.
I think one of the most important things, not so much agnostic, but I think speed of market is going to be very important. Speed of market as in, the speed of skills obsolescence and job obsolescence. I think the speed of market is very important. That's why in Singapore we are on that journey to really transform, together with the tripartite partners and various stakeholders, to move away from real academic learning that takes 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, to probably 20 seconds, on the move, on the go, and bite size. So short and sweet, with short attention span these days, whether it's the young or the not so young. I think, being short and sweet and concise. I just share a story. Recently I wanted to change a battery for this remote control. I asked around, nobody knew in the home. Asked some friends, nobody knew. Then I realized I should just have keyed in YouTube, and then, after watching a 20-second video, I solved my problem. Yeah. So I think increasingly problem solving, in various spaces, whether it's a financial, professional services sector or any other sector, is going to be short and sweet, speed the market.
And if I may add to that, right, I think when we talk skilling, upskilling, reskilling, we actually mean on-the-job skills, right? We're not talking about the PhD degree, which probably still needs all the rigor and research it requires and done over a few years. But a lot of the discussions about skills and on-the-job skills need to be far more outcome-oriented than before, right? So short, solve the precise problem at hand.
Yeah, I would definitely add to that because I have a very strong feeling about it, right? I kind of told a story about how I re-educated myself through the process, right? But the real, and also I think we have another hypothesis which people might really agree that we're not living in a society which we lacks information. In fact, there's an information surplus, and there are almost too much information. So I'll be under the assumption that people should be aware and they should be able to upskill themselves. But in fact, after working in China for 3 years, I kind of realized that it might not be the best hypothesis. I don't know about your experience in Africa, but that's definitely sounds very familiar to me. It's the most difficult part is probably on the discoverability aspect. It's if people actually knows that they can go to this website called YouTube and find this 30 minutes video, boom, we're all good. But in fact, what I realize is really hard for us to even reach that kind of quorum of having 100% coverages of everyone is being able to aware of, hey, we are able to kind of help ourselves or help our friends and families when they're really going to be losing their job. What we're seeing more is still people are kind of going to social media and kind of essentially raise their hands and say, hey, AI is going to ruin our jobs. So it's a problem we have to face.
So can I clarify what you're saying? Are you saying people are not aware of where they can access the information, but they can skill themselves? Or are you saying the idea that people can just skill themselves is not really working?
What I'm trying to say here is we can essentially solve, we have a lot of problems to solve. That's the first thing. Secondly, the most important aspect is probably discoverability problem. Because for the people who might be losing their jobs are probably the ones who are least aware of the information and upskill options they have available in the market. That's basically what I'm saying.
I think it's oh, sorry, please go.
No, and that's where I think industry and government comes in to actually provide that information, do some research and say, what are the possibilities, where the world's going, and what are short-term opportunities for people to get skills. So I think there's a role for individuals, organizations, government, and institutions to play in that.
I think it's really interesting because we're talking about upskilling as if it's just individuals we need to be upskilling about certain technologies and how it will affect their roles. But I think when you're talking about jurisdictionally, I think you can actually learn a lot from some of the emerging markets. And the reason I said that point earlier about we're talking about individuals is I think about regulators. And we were doing some stuff on RegTech with a number of different policymakers. And there's actually something set up called RegTech for Regulators Accelerator, where they were looking to emerging markets. So I think it was Thailand and the Philippines, for instance, where they were testing different solutions and upskilling themselves from those emerging market jurisdictions. So I think a lot can be learned from other countries and not just from looking inwards.
Absolutely. And actually, what I think is really interesting is that we think of, so first of all, I don't know if you agree, and how many conferences have you done in the past 2 years, but this talent thing came after COVID. Since we sort of changed our habits of working, right? And all of a sudden we realized that, we need to do more digital, that, we didn't need to meet physically all the time to get shit done, et cetera, right? And then all of a sudden, this upskilling and reskilling, which are two very different things, okay? They become, you know, at every conference sort of topics, right? Nicole, go, say.
So I'm going to slightly disagree with that point. So maybe it's come up more in conferences, but I've been doing upskilling at Barclays for 10 years. Like, yes, it's been exasperated because there has been a quicker shift to digital in the last 3 years because of COVID.
It became more visible. I didn't say that it wasn't a topic before, but all of a sudden people start, like fintech, you know. Fintech, you could argue that is 40, 50 years old, but everyone talked about it 15 years ago, since 2008, 2009. Same thing, right? But what I want, my question here is, the instinct is, oh, upskilling is like, a coder that today codes in COBOL, let teach her Python so that she can become a data scientist, okay? This is the basic, but it's far from what the industry deeply needs. And I think that you upskilling the regulators is the perfect, less, how do you say it, common sense example that is what the industry really needs, don't you think?
Yeah, I think there are two parts to this, right? And if I pick on what Richard had said, right? There's an aspect of discoverability so you can get yourself a new job. But if you actually see what it requires to get a new job, there is so much more, right? So in our experience of upskilling, reskilling, where clients have told us we want to see the outcome in terms of a new job, it leads to a range of additional questions. Is it people moving within the company to to different jobs? You know, the kinds of things you've been talking about, that requires something. Are they moving to a completely different role? Is the industry shifting? So I think so there is some amount of teach them the latest skill, right? Because skills are changing. But there is a lot of what do we need to do this at scale, because we are having an education system that's churning out 30,000, 50,000, 100,000 people, which governments are asking today, and they are not quite employable, right? And the education system is not building this, shifting the skills, right? You speak of the half-life of skills. Our universities are a bit slower than that. They're very good at certain things, but they may not be at the cutting edge of employable skills that are needed today.
He's calling the trade union here, Patrick. You should say something.
Yeah. No, this exactly spot on what we're doing in Singapore. I mean, we are thankful we started the journey quite early, 7-8 years ago, where we went industry by industry to look at how to transform the industry. And over and above that, looking at various skills requirements. So we came up with skills frameworks for each and every one of these clusters and sectors. So I think we were fortunate that we were a bit ahead of the curve. And therefore, when COVID hit, we went into virtual learning, digital learning, bite-sized learning, on-the-go learning, as well as blended, and then now, of course, more hybrid than ever. But I think the key is a multi-stakeholder approach, because government can fund, but at the end of the day, employers need to play their part, and the individual too. Because in the last 3 years, as we know, there was a lot of training conducted virtually. I attended one quite heavy training every year for the last 3 years, and trust me, it's not easy to pick up skills like that, just attending a digital program. And these 3 programs, because they were Skills Future funded in Singapore, it came with an examination requirement. And trust me, it's not easy to get 75 marks at my age. And it's back to the books again, and really it's quite, the rigor is not easy. And even if you survive the exams, you know, it's not, the learning journey is not just being aware that you need these skills, but of course the fortitude and the resilience to be able to carry on and, you know, be on that treadmill journey. Because you can't just pick one skill and then you expect to survive for the next 5, 10 years or 20 years like many years ago. Today you probably need to be on the treadmill on the go. And the treadmill today is not 2 kilometers an hour, it's about 10 kilometers an hour. So you really need to be on your toes.
It's not a switch, it's a process, right?
Yeah. That's right.
Look, I couldn't agree more. And sorry, I'm just going to make this quick point. We make it seem like the supply side is the problem. Put up 200 courses of 30 hours each and people will get skilled. It doesn't work that way. That's not how the average human being relates. Once it becomes a requirement to show that you've done these Coursera courses or whatever, then people will put it on their resume and they'll do it. But is that really getting outcomes? I think the outcome focus is very important. The way we skill needs to change as well.
I kind of want to really echo on the point that what skill really means, right? So when Matthew actually brought the question, it's more like, hey, like COBOL to Python, right? I can't really envision how many Python courses I saw in the past couple of years, right? And even I myself, who used to be like, JavaScript and, backend writers, I ended up learning like Python myself, as if, this is the most important thing to do on the planet. But now with, the LLMs, it naturally becomes the question is, oh, you don't need to learn Python anymore. You just need to be good at prompt engineering. And now you see this kind of phases of, oh, okay, so what's the most important skill in this new era is asking questions. I was like, dude, no, asking questions is a fundamental skill you learn as a human being from, age 2. So it's really not those kind of things, right? So I guess what I'm trying to make a point here is like, first thing first, when we focus on skills, right, we have this kind of hardcore skills, but there's also this kind of like accompanying skills, which are, as sometimes we call soft skills, but in fact, they're not really soft. They're almost like, accompanying skills, which goes a long way with your life. But based on your side, it's like from the demand side. The demand side doesn't really naturally have this demand, but the supply side is like, take the Python course. Maybe we need to do something with it. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to add to what Patrick kind of mentioned in terms of how jobs are changing. I think 30 years ago, if you got a job and you could stay on the same job, doing almost the same thing and retire. I think where the world's going and where we are already, if your job is not changing every 5 years, you're probably in the wrong job. So you have to be adaptable. You have to start thinking that you need to look at being agile, being adaptable, what you can do yourself to upgrade your skills so that you're moving along, because the job's going to change. That is a given. I don't think we can get a job and stay in doing the same thing for the next 10 years. But one example of upskilling, especially in the IT sector that I've seen, there was a huge need for salespeople in the IT sector, huge gap. But with AI right now, the customer service people are being displaced. So these are people in the companies that know the company's product very, very well, but AI is doing a much better job in doing that service. So what companies are doing right now is taking those people, providing them some sales training, and then actually making them salespeople. So it's a very nice way of upskilling within the same organization. Just one example of what's happening right now in a larger scale.
So I don't think this is what we're saying, so I just want to confirm. I don't think anyone on this panel has said online learning is bad, just that there should be other ways that some people might need to learn, because it's not a one-size-fits-all in how someone wants to learn. I've got a twin sister, and I can tell you quite clearly, we learn things in a very different way. I look over at Traman, and I know the work that CFTE does in upskilling and online seminars, and I find it incredibly valuable. So I think it really comes down to who you are as a person and how you want to learn. And it's a job for all of us, and you as well, to understand the different ways that you learn best, and for us to understand the best ways to be teaching for different individuals, because we can't interact the same way with everyone. That's just not going to be practical for
Absolutely.
a good outcome.
And what are you trying to learn, right? Because some things are very conducive to online learning, other things are not. So, yes.
No, I'll just jump in to say online learning is fantastic. I have an entire business doing online learning, so I just want to make sure.
Sorry, no, I just wanted to ask, not that my question is going to change, but how many students or job seekers are in this room? Students and job seekers? There are a few. Okay, great. So then my question makes sense. So we talk as if sometimes upskilling and reskilling is the company or your employer deciding what you as a human being should be reskilling or upskilling to, right? But can we, actually you, put yourself in the shoes of the person who is, who is in the process of being upskilled or reskilled? Because I am not sure that today we are providing enough instruments for people to understand what is this best process to get there. And sometimes it's almost like everyone is passive about it. So put yourself, back some years ago, you see the world of the world of jobs today, and you think, how do I get there? And I wanted you to start answering, because I'm sure that is a problem that you have been confronted to.
So I love that question because when I sit with my team at Barclays and other stakeholders, I always say to them there's two different views, two different hats that I work with. My Barclays hat and myself as a person, as a consumer, potentially sometimes as an investor, those hats. And what do I need from that second hat from my first hat? And I think that's really, really important. I think it's such a great question because you can live in an echo chamber within my institution and other institutions. So you need to think about who you were before you entered potentially that echo chamber. And you know, I'm very lucky. I said my parents are South African. I've also been able to go to lots of different jurisdictions during my lifetime. And that's really added to how I look at things slightly differently. Because if I based everything on living in the UK and working at Barclays and being a lawyer beforehand, I don't think I would be I don't say not valuable because my bank will tell me that's very disappointing, but as valuable as I might want to think.
Please, everyone chip in 3 minutes, please.
So I'm kind of curious how many people here are actually software engineers or like data scientists? Might have a raise of
Software
hands.
engineers, raise hands.
Okay, so yeah, less than people. So for all the people, the recommendation I have is participating in open source. Kind of back to the square one. No, I'm being very serious. I mean, like, because we have a lot of information. In fact, I mean, open source has a lot of valuable information there. So if you have this kind of software needs, participating in open source is the best. And for the rest of you in the room, I would say the focus on the fundamentals. I went to MBAs and I kind of feel the business aspect didn't really add much to me. But the two courses which I remember the most, one is the negotiation and one is power and politics. So those two things add a lot of value to my current work, and it kind of makes me feel super comfortable sitting on stage like this, talking to people, and I'm not really concerning about learning myself, you know, once I begin learning the tools of how to use those tools. So just my 2 cents.
Yeah, I'll give my take on this training and upskilling. I know many of you from different jurisdictions, different part of the world, different industries, different size of companies. I think 2 very important things, and we've been doing this in Singapore for the longest. And of course, of late, given more emphasis is the fact that there are 2 ways to look at training. One is an employer-supported, employer-directed kind of training. Because you know where the future jobs are, you know where the future contracts are coming in, you know what the direction, the strategic trust and the strategies of the company is. So you will try to make sure your employees, you know, get upskilled to prepare them for those jobs that are coming in. So I think employer plays a very important part. But the other most important element is individual initiated training, meaning having individual responsibility to ensure that you stay true to your passions, pursue your interests, at the same time second skill yourself so that you prepare for any curveballs or exigencies that come along the way. These days, any industry can be affected. It can be the biggest company or the smallest company, but any curveballs can be thrown at any time now that we have learned in the last 3 years. So I think important, not just for the employer, but also the individual to pick up and take responsibility in upskilling.
Well, I see the time. So 3 things. Like you said, follow your passion. It's going to be even more important to have the energy to keep reskilling yourself. Second, that mindset shift. You will need to be building new skills and not as a one-off, as a continuous learning. And third, it's going to be really helpful to have a network of people you talk to, people you hear from, to know what is going around, because you're just not going to be aware of everything yourself. So do you have people who bring new ideas and thoughts to you?
In this changing landscape, stay current, whatever it takes.
Thank you very much, guys. Thank you.